How are we doing, everybody? Welcome to Russell Heritage Golf. Today we're going to be talking about how to hit the golf ball further, okay? And how you're going to create this squatting movement in your golf swing. Loads of people are coming onto the channel asking me about this. How come the pros lose height? And they've also asked me other questions reference the body as well, which I'm going to answer in today's question. But the idea is today that you're going to understand how to drop height, how to create this squatting movement exactly like the pros, so that you can start to introduce it into your game if you want to. The thing we have to do is discuss the backswing. We have to make the basic suggestion that you're in a decent position at the top of your backswing to start working on this movement. The best way to be able to know if you're in a decent position is if the weight is in the right heel. If you can get the feeling that the weight is in the right heel at the top of your backswing, it would generally lend itself for you to be able to start working on the downswing position. If you feel like your weight isn't in the right heel, then don't even entertain trying to work on this, because it won't come to fruition anyway and you'll get yourself in a bigger mess. Work on the backswing first. Right, what needs to happen? Top of the backswing, weight in the right heel. Soon as we start the downswing, right? Now this is different for different golfers. I've mentioned this before on the channel. Some pros, as they're still going back, start to drop in towards the left-hand side. Other pros wait till they complete the backswing, then start to drop. It's a momentum gainer, this is, right? Yes, there's going to be a little bit of lateral movement in your golf swing. An inch, 2 inches. Just make sure that it's not excessive so that it becomes a slide. But you need to shift weight towards the left-hand side. And what we know from pro swings is by the time they're in left arm horizontal coming down, the weight pressure is in that left-hand side. So they are pushing pressure in towards the left, then triggering a rotation to get out of the way. Quite a few people ask me questions about how can the weight be in the left and you trigger a rotation. If you're struggling to trigger a rotation with the weight in the left, it's just because you're not doing it correctly. Doesn't mean that you should be triggering the rotation with the weight on the right. And I can understand it. Sometimes people might feel it's easier just to turn from here, which I get, but then you're far too far behind the ball and you need to make sure that you're gathering momentum before you start triggering rotation, exactly the same as any other side on sport. Baseball, you'd be stepping, you'd be turning. You know, throwing a ball, you'd be stepping, you'd be turning. There's always going to be those subtle changes of direction where as you're still going back, you're stepping forward. They're tiny movements, but they still exist. Just because it's a tiny movement doesn't mean you don't have to do it, because what I often find in lessons is that the smallest little movement can make the biggest difference for somebody's ability to be able to create a better range in motion. So what we don't know so far is the weight should be in the right heel as we're going back by the time we get to left arm horizontal. By the time you complete the top of the backswing, my suggestion would be, if you're trying to make your swing more athletic and more powerful, this is the point where you want to start feeling as though you're shifting weight towards that lead side. As you're shifting weight towards the lead side, yes, this is the point where you now want to feel like you're putting pressure down in towards the ground, which would then lend itself to the pelvis driving downwards. Okay, so the hips should be driving into the ground as soon as you start this downswing move, because I think it's easier to feel like you're gaining momentum from that position. So it's basically here, then as I complete the swing, I start to shift in towards the left, which is a lateral movement, but it's subtle. Once you've got the weight on that left-hand side, then you can start triggering a rotation to be able to get out of the way. It's key to understand when you come to triggering this rotational movement is a couple of things. One, we're trying to put pressure down in towards the ground, which is why one of the illusions why we look like we'll lose height coming in towards this downswing. Two, we want to keep this rotation proper. A couple of things, good little tip, nice and simple. Keep the belt buckle downward facing, feel like the belt buckle is chasing the target line. What this will do is it'll introduce flexion onto the left knee. What it will also do is you'll feel the weight pressure go more in towards the left heel. And what it will finally do is it will give you this separation look on the knees. Yes, you want to avoid this laterally moving, because this is going to get the pelvis too tilted, which is therefore going to encourage the left leg to straighten. And as soon as the left leg straightens, you're out of a range of movement. Meaning you might get this great looking backswing, this beautiful little fall in, but from here, if you move this way, you're going to be stuck, you're going to be flicking, but arguably more importantly, and I think this is something that I document a lot on the channel, that if my right knee starts to move this way, my pelvis is going to extend based on the idea that my pelvis is now facing too horizontally instead of more downward towards the floor. So what you should be feeling at this point is heel, shift subtle, from here now triggering a rotation. As I keep my belt buckle downward facing, I start to feel the weight progressively moving between my left heel, but here's the key one, my right toe. This is why this is okay for the heel to lift up. It helps you trigger a rotation, it helps you keep moving, it helps the pelvis stay downward facing. I think this is why a lot of people struggle to rotate with the weight on the lead leg, because if I do it now, I've got keep my heel on the ground and I get to here, that's as far as I can go. I feel like I'm stuck, I feel like I can't go anymore. But if I allow my heel to lift and I keep the belt buckle downward facing, then it gives me a greater range in motion, which means that I can stay downward facing for longer, which means by the time then I'm creating my thrust, it's later in the swing, which means it gives me the ability to still compress the ball. If I'm having to trigger this move too soon, that's why you're going to look stuck and a little bit too flicky. So this is important to understand. So let me just repeat it very quickly again. Right heel, subtle fall in. Rotate, keep the belt buckle downward facing. Left knee should start to create flexion. Right heel should start to lift. But based on the correct hip rotation, the knee should start to separate, not this. Every time you do this, you can see the way my belt buckle becomes more upward facing as opposed to this. I think if you can focus on one of those things, mainly the simplicity of keeping the belt buckle downward facing, but allowing the right heel to lift, is going to give you a much greater range in motion. And it's going to help you initiate this feeling of driving down into the ground and losing height. The thing, however, we're not done yet. Now we need to talk about the upper body. What needs to happen in the upper body is that the right elbow needs to drive in front of the right hip. By doing this is basically the same as throwing a ball again, same analogy, baseball, all the rest of it, which basically means you're going into external rotation on the right shoulder. It basically means that you're able to hold on to lag for longer. So again, if I represent this now with a golf club, instead of going this way, I basically mean that you're going to be going more this way. And yes, what starts to happen is that we start to introduce a right lateral bend, which is like a crunch towards the right hand side. And inevitably, if I introduce a crunch onto the right hand side, my head is going to visually drop because my spine is obviously moving. So if I now start to get that feeling of putting pressure down in towards the left hand side, whilst also getting the right elbow to drive in front of my right hip, then I'm going to significantly lose height at the start of that downswing position. And that is in essence what you want to be as powerful as you can, because you want to put pressure down in towards the ground so then you can jump up and hit the ball. So then you can come up and thrust and hit it with all your power. Also, if you can drive that right elbow, then you're going to be holding onto that lag for longer. It means you can release the club so much later, coming in towards that hit, and hit it better than you ever have done before. It's it, right? And I say that is it. Yes, it's complex. Yes, it's probably one of the more complex videos that I've put out, but people are asking the questions and I want you guys to understand that it's achievable, but maybe you break it down into bite-sized chunks. I would always focus on the lower body first, because if you can get your lower body functioning, you'll still play better golf. Then start messing around with this right elbow. There's nothing worse than trying to do the elbow if you're drifting forward, because then you're going to shank it and miss-hit it, and you're going to be put off instantaneously. The exercise for you would be to just go and get yourself like a foam roller, just a bit of foam, insulation foam, up against the side of the house, and just hit it. You know, just hit it with the foam roller, because what it will start to do is it'll improve your functionality, because you won't be able to rotate, or you won't be able to slide laterally into the wall. So it will cause you to trigger that rotation, but also what you'll start to feel is, because you're going to be hitting it harder, you're going to be holding onto that leg for longer, and it's a great exercise to get that feeling of how to introduce that athletic movement. If you've enjoyed the video, always appreciate a thumbs up and a like. What is free? That subscribe button. What is also free, press the little bell icon as well. That means you'll receive notifications every time a new video comes out. What is also free is that in the description below you'll see my social media pages. Loads of golfers now are taking opportunity of this, where they are sending their swings into the social media platforms, and that means that I'm using the content for the channel, or if I'm not using the content for the channel, at least I can give you a few tips. There is nothing worse, as you've seen with the guys that have been used on the channel before, that you start working on something when it's not actually right for you. So you know what to do, go away and have a work on it. You want to start creating this more powerful position, you need to understand you need to use the ground and you need to hold on to the release. By putting pressure in towards the ground and contorting the spine is going to give you this kind of visual illusion of losing height. Don't just go around losing height, because that isn't actually how it's working. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Press the subscribe button, send the swings in, why not, it's absolutely free. I'll catch up with you again tomorrow.